Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to have you here with us. I'd like to call to order our May 1st, 2018 City Council meeting. This is a regular meeting. It's approximately 5 o'clock, and we will start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Jim Lane.
Present.
Vice Mayor Virginia Cordy.
Here.
Council members Suzanne Clapp.
Here.
Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
Linda Milhaven.
Here.
Guy Phillips.
Present.
And David Smith.
Present.
City Manager Jim Thompson.
Here.
City Attorney Bruce Washburn.
Here.
City Treasurer Jeff Nichols.
Here.
City Auditor Sharon Walker.
Here.
And the clerk is present.
Thank you. Some items of business. I'd like to just say that we have for your, if you'd like to speak on any of the agenda items or for public comments, it's the white card that's held up over the city clerk's head right over here to my right. And if you'd like to give us any written comments on any of the agenda items, that is the yellow card she currently has over her head over here to my right. And we will read those written comments through the course of the proceedings. Today we have Scottsdale Police Officers Jason Glenn and Tony Wells are here to assist. And I might also say we have Commander or Assistant Chief Jeff Walters here with us for his last meeting here in the Kiva and with the city. He's not quite yet retired, but just about to. But we certainly would want to take the occasion to give you a hand for all your great work. The areas behind the council dais are for staff and for council. We do have facilities for you over here to my left under that exit sign over there. And today for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to ask Vice Mayor Cordy to lead us in the pledge. If you can, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We do have the invocation this evening. We have Rabbi Ariel Shoshan here for a prayer.
Almighty God, instill within our mayor and the members of the City Council the deep understanding of the potential that this day holds as they work together for the common good of all people in our great city in the Valley of the Sun. Bestow your blessings on our mayor and the members of this council so that their deliberations be just and with wisdom to benefit the people whom they represent. Guide them with your kindness and shower them with your love. Open their hearts to respond meaningfully to the voices of those who hunger for justice, equality, and opportunity. Give them the strength and wisdom to ensure the security of this great city and to strengthen the hand of our distinguished police department, fire department, and first responders who care for our lives as they are called to risk their own. We ask you, God, to bless each and every member of this august body with the same courage that has been exhibited by the leaders that have preceded them in order to fulfill the vision and purpose of this great city for us and all who will follow in the future. Bless us all with a life of peace, goodness, safety, physical health, mental health, a life without shame or disgrace, a life with honor and dignity, and a life in which our heart's desires are fulfilled for good. Amen.
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 Thank you, Rabbi. First item for the mayor's report, we have the Gathering of Heroes Week proclamation. That proclamation reads as follows. Whereas there is no greater calling than to defend American freedom and values, and whereas the men and women who defend those values make deep sacrifices, whereas both the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation and the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation are holding local events this month to assist military veterans and their families, and whereas assisting at those events will be 8 Medal of Honor recipients, individuals who have been awarded the highest military recognition for valor our country can bestow. I, therefore, Mayor Jim Lane, do hereby proclaim May 9th through the 19th, 2018, as Gathering of Heroes Week, and urge all citizens to thank the veteran heroes in our midst. In witness whereof, here I'm going to set my hand and cause to affix the seal of the great city of Scottsdale. And if I could, please, I have the representatives from the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation and the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation to the podium to accept the proclamation. Take a photo. Yes, I'm sorry. You're going to go ahead and give us a bit of a presentation. Pardon me. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lane, members of council. My name is John Bennett. I'm a volunteer with the Arizona chapter of the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. To my left is retired Air Force Colonel Charlie Black, and I'd like to have him say a couple of words.
You wonder how Air Force Colonel gets involved in the Marine Corps.
Mr. Black, I'm sorry, but we do have an audience out there, believe it or not, in TV land.
You're probably wondering how an Air Force Colonel gets involved with the Marine Corps, but I was told by my civilian boss, who had been a sergeant in the Marine Corps, that it would be a good idea to give him a hand, so that's how I got involved. I'm a volunteer, too.
We're all volunteers. We have a short video to show you, if we could cue that in, please.
On behalf of the children we serve, the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, McClef, was created by former Marines and law enforcement personnel. Our strong mission is to encourage spiritual, moral, intellectual, and physical development of children through education. McClef is a nonprofit organization that provides college scholarship funding for children whose parents were killed in the line of duty.
So I was at a bond presentation for a kid, Robbie Hepburn, whose father was a border patrolman, and he was killed in the line of duty. And it was a fantastic moment. The kid had a real glow in his eyes, just looking up at us, the offensive linemen. And our work really pales in comparison to the work that his dad does, but his just goes unnoticed. So, you could really see that we gave a little hope to this kid and turned this into a positive situation.
We also provide medical.
Thank you. The mission of the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation is to encourage the spiritual, moral, intellectual, and physical development of children through education. We strongly believe that this nation's most precious resource is its youth. We began in 1995, and this foundation was formed by former Marines and law enforcement officers. And what we do is we provide assistance and support to the families of our nation's fallen heroes. Since 1995, we have given away, in terms of scholarships, over $74 million. And of that $74 million, $1.4 million has gone here to Arizona recipients. We're immensely proud of our work, but there's still a lot to be done, and that's why this coming Friday, not this Friday, but a week from Friday, May 11th, we have our annual golf tournament at the Greyhawk Country Club. As Mayor referred to, this is a Gathering of Heroes Week. Every year we have Medal of Honor recipients come in to support us, and this is our main fundraiser. The night before is the Gathering of Heroes at American Legion Post number 34 in Cave Creek. The Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation is a 501c3 organization that's been recognized for our excellence and efficiency by Independent Charities of America. For every dollar that is donated or we take in, 98 cents goes to the children of our fallen heroes. And what we do is we give them $30,000 Merrill Lynch Edge account, which is theirs when they're 18. We encourage them to use it for education, but not all kids are cut out to go to college, if they want to go, to a vocational school or something like that, they can certainly use that. Depending on the age of the child, if it's a very young child, that $30,000 grows considerably by the time they're 18. So $30,000 to each child. It takes a lot of money to be able to do that, and that's why this golf tournament is very important. If you so choose, we would encourage and welcome your donations. Our website is very simple. It's www.mclef, Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, az.org. And we would welcome your donations. Thank you, Mary Lane and members of council, for giving us the opportunity to speak here tonight. And I'd like to welcome Kathleen from the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. And although we are different organizations, we both strive to do the same thing. So, Kathy?
Thank you. I think, Mike, if he's going to, there's a video to play for us, too.
Some goodbyes are worth fighting for. Help the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation honor Marines by educating their children at mcsf.org.
This year we are hosting our annual event, May 19th, at the JW Marriott. We are honoring a Scottsdale Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jacob Hug, who gave his life in Nepal. The anniversary of his death will be a week before, on Mother's Day. We are setting up a scholarship in Jacob's name for children of Marines. The Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation has been around since 1962. We currently provide 97 scholarships for Arizona children of Marines that are attending four-year college, two-year college, or trade school. We hope this year to raise over $1 million. We are one of the top fundraisers for the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation in the country. As you all know, your citizen Bruce Halley has passed away, and we'll be honoring him this year. And Bruce gave, when we started this foundation here in Arizona 8 years ago, to have this celebration, $1 million the first year. So we will be renaming our top award the Bruce Halley Semper Fidelis Award. Lance Corporal Jacob Hugg's scholarship will be named that night, and we'll also be honoring Dan and Diane Nelson, who are also from Scottsdale. The wonderful thing about the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation is that 92% of the kids that we give money to graduate, and 50% of the kids are first-time college attendees from their family. So it's really exciting when you think that someone in their family has never been to college, and yet they're now going on to be successful. And we are very fortunate this year to have the opportunities that we have with the Scholarship Foundation. So we would appreciate any support that you can give the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. 100% of our donations go to these students. The last thing we want is someone who's served their country not to be able to provide a college education to their children, so that's what we do. And I'll just end that I'm a proud daughter of a U.S. Marine. So thank you for your time, and Semper Fi.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we have move on to our public comment. And public comment is reserved for citizens' comments regarding non-agendized items of which no action will be taken by council. These items, comments are limited to issues within the jurisdiction of the City Council, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes each with a maximum of 5 speakers. There'll be another opportunity at the end of our session as well. We do have 4 requests to speak, and we start with Howard Myers.
Thank you. Howard Myers, 6631 East Horndale Trail in Scottsdale. Like it or not, the Desert Discovery Center, or Desert Edge, has united this community in a way I personally have not seen since the preserve was formed itself. We have over 160 volunteers collecting signatures actively and 360 people that have signed up to help in some way, in any way they can. The outpouring from the community has been overwhelming. If we can reach a voter, they are very eager to sign this petition and actually thank our volunteers for doing this. They want a voice, they want to vote, they want to be heard. The response from visitors has been equally supportive, and a lot of them just give us money because they can't sign the thing and they can't vote, but they say, we'll support this in any way we can. Tourists love the preserve as it is, and they tell us all that. I also have to say I'm amazed at the effort that our volunteers have put in getting the signatures required. If it's successful, it's because of their dedication and their time and their passion to get this to happen, to give themselves and their neighbors a voice. Because Scottsdale's signature requirements are really difficult to meet, much more so than the state, we're actually reaching about 1/3 of the people who are going to vote in the next election. That's a fairly significant number. The bottom line is you have united the community not by what you've done, but really your actions on the DDC. We also hear loud and clear they are upset, and this is the other thing, it goes beyond just a DDC or a preserve, that they are upset with the direction the city is taking, allowing tall buildings, the block views, increased traffic, the parking problems that are created. All of this really that decreases their quality of life. It's amazing how unified they are in these sentiments. Most say that are disgusted that they are not heard and that their concerns are not welcome and that they have no voice in government. This effort to give citizens a vote in their preserve has woken them up and energized them. And I've never seen anything like it before, so we'll see if it makes a difference in the election. For that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Next is Jeremy Whiteley.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm Jeremy Whiteley. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I moved here from Bellevue, Washington, which is basically the Seattle area. And I've kind of noticed that condo buildings, in particular the condo building I live in, doesn't recycle here. And I brought it up to our board. They researched it and decided not to recycle because it would cost $110 more per month, which I think is stupid. Obviously, if you don't recycle in Seattle, your neighbors will go serial mom on you. So I think my ask is you guys think about requiring condos and businesses to recycle here, make it inexpensive for them to recycle, and make it more expensive for them to just throw things away. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteley. And next is Christy Lee Kitchen.
Hello, friends. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, I wanted to thank you all for unknowingly helping us galvanize our community. Also, happy May. Today is the first day of National Preservation Month, so how appropriate. My friend Sunny here reminded me last night that I'm never going to agree with you guys 100%, and I'm okay with that. We all love and respect our city, and that's why I stand here, and that's what truly matters. I stand here for and out of mad respect for nature, our city, and our citizens united. Frank Lloyd Wright said, you have to go wholeheartedly into anything in order to achieve anything worth having. When you denied us citizens a vote on the future of our McDowell Sonoran Preserve, we powwowed, we left our differences to the side, and we worked together on what we thought would be a solution. Again, together. We basically did the same thing that my mom and her friends did when they started the McDowell-Snoren Land Trust and started the preserve almost 30 years ago. My awe-inspiring friends and I have gone out and had a chance to talk with over 23,000 Scottsdale citizens, your constituents, as we collected their signatures on our petition. And it's really been kind of fun. When I'm talking to our neighbors and explain that the McDowell-Snoren Preserve is the largest urban preserve in the entire United States, they're usually shocked and quickly grab my pen to sign. Our preserve is the size of 40 New York Central Parks, featuring 31,000 acres, over 200 miles of hiking, biking, and equestrian trails. It's also home to significant archaeological sites and 749 species of flora and fauna. This land belongs to us. This land belongs to you, belongs to me, belongs to all the people here, your kids and your grandkids. I want to say in what happens with a city asset that we've all happily voted and taxed ourselves to pay for. Protecting our preserve is not a political issue. I have been walking arm in arm with people of all walks of life, political affiliations, and ages. We've literally laughed, we've cried, we've gone through just about every emotion possible. We all have strong personalities that we like to remain authentic to, which has caused many of us to butt heads repeatedly during this process. Yet we've remained steadfast. We are now what I would consider a giant family. The 23,000 citizens who have signed our petition agree that our desert is mesmerizing just the way it is, all without being refrigerated or augmented in any way. This mission is truly fueling my life and continuing to ignite my love for our awesome city. I want to do anything I can to help protect the preserve, and I will continue to defend it fiercely. I love Scottsdale. I will never agree with the destruction of our preserve under the guise of STEM education and sustainability, all while using our tax funds to enrich special interests. That, my friends, is what we call greenwashing. We have the McDowell-Snoren Conservancy, who currently helps protect and promote the preserve, and those 650 volunteers do incredible, thankless work for the city. The preserve saved my life, and I want to pay it forward. It's almost Mother's Day, and you must love your mother. In this case, Mother Earth. There is no Planet B, and no more land is being created. We have an opportunity to keep Scottsdale authentic and unique. On Earth Day, we went out to the Gateway Trailhead to celebrate the preserve and what it means to us. We created a gift for you all, down here, and in 5 hours, we had hikers, bikers, and their families signing what they love about our preserve. Presenting this to you all reflects how our community is responding to this issue, and we wanted you all to see it in person. I like to think of myself as a magical woman, and I manifest things, and I have notes all over my home, in my phone, just about anywhere I am, about succeeding and saving my sanctuary, which basically means it's going to come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchen. Next is, pardon me, we try to maintain just a quorum here, please, but I appreciate the sentiments. Next is Jason Alexander.
Thank you. So as Howard and Christy have already shared with you, we have had thousands and thousands of conversations with our fellow neighbors. I have personally collected 1,200 signatures for this effort. And as you can imagine, that translates into a tremendous number of conversations with my fellow citizens. And the overwhelming sentiment that comes through for them is anger and frustration with the vision that this city council has put forward. Development, density, debt, and the DDC. That could summarize the frustrations and anger of our citizens with the direction the city council has led the city. Development, density, debt, and the DDC. There's been a lot of talk about trust, and I think the citizens trust you. I think they very much trust that you will do what you say and you say what you mean. They don't share your vision. It's that simple. So trust is not the issue. It's a shared vision. It's that we feel, many of us feel, that this council is not listening. We want open space. We want lower taxes. We want a balanced budget. And instead, we're getting development, density, debt, and the Desert Discovery Center. The reason so many people have signed our petition is not just the Desert Discovery Center. It's the canyons of 4-story buildings lining McDowell Road. It's the legions of littered Lime bikes up and down our downtown streets. It's the upside-down public safety costs because we're supporting businesses at the expense of public safety in the entertainment district. It's 6- and 8-story projects coming in at the air park with no plan for traffic other than more roundabouts up and down Raintree Drive. It's that giant thing at Costco that was crammed in under the auspices of a church's zoning. It's storage units being built on Shea Boulevard and zoning exemptions being given for those things that simply were not intended to be there. It is high-density housings being built in the far north up by Pinnacle Peak rather than retail, which we need to balance our budget. These are the reasons people are signing our petition. So we all agree that the city has infrastructure needs. Every single one of us agrees with those needs, and we agree that they're apolitical. But to get a vote, you need to separate those needs out from the questions and the obscurity and the murkiness of a $350 million bond package that some of you tried to make a $380 million bond package at the very last minute. Again, we trust our city council. We don't agree with some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. That completes the testimony or public comment. And thank you all for that. Next order of business is we have some supporting materials for item number 4, which were added to the agenda less than 10 days prior to the meeting and require a separate vote to remain on the agenda. So my request would be I'd accept a vote to accept the agenda as presented or to continue the added item to the May 22nd council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Well, there was an either or there, but I'll assume that to accept it as it was presented.
Accept as presented.
Okay, thank you. And the second with that. All right. Next order of business is a request to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 10th.
Your Honor.
I'm sorry. Yes, we do have to vote. So all those in favor of that motion, please indicate by aye and register your vote. Aye. It's unanimous, 7-0 for that added material. The next order of business is a request to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 10th, 2018. Those minutes have been provided to you. If there are any adds or deletes, please indicate at this point. If not, I'd accept a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve, Councilwoman Clapp, and seconded by Councilwoman Littlefield. We're then ready to vote. All those in favor, please indicate by aye. Those opposed with a nay. Aye. Minutes are accepted. Thank you. Moving on to our consent items, which item 1 through 3. See no cards or requests on that. Any comments from council? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to accept the consent items, agenda 1 through 3.
Mayor, I move to accept consent agenda items 1 through 3.
Motion is made by the Vice Mayor and seconded by Councilwoman Littlefield. We're then ready to vote. All those in favor, please indicate by aye. Those opposed with a nay. Aye. It's unanimous then. We'll move on to our regular agenda item 4, or one and only regular agenda item, which is November 6, 2018 special election options. And a presenter tonight is David Lipinski, our city engineer.
Good evening. Here tonight, bringing forward the item for special election options for the November 6th, 2018 election. Coming out of the work study session from April 17th, or the special meeting from April 17th, there were 2 options to be brought forward to be discussed. The first was Resolution 11124, which was a 0.15% sales tax increment for transportation projects, capital projects, and operations and related costs. And the other item for discussion was a $350 million general obligation bond package. The 0.15% sales tax is for the transportation improvement projects first, being ALCP. The 0.15% generates the city's roughly $71 million match to the ALCP's $170 million funds, which would bring the total of $240 million worth of infrastructure investment from the sales tax. Included in the ballot language is in the language about the exclusion of anything in the McDonald Sonoran Preserve or any Desert Discovery Center. The second option brought forward tonight is the same as you've previously seen. It's for $350 million general obligation bond package. This would cover those types of projects from departments that do not have funding sources already dedicated to them. In the package that you have tonight is also the ballot language for that, including the exception of anything in the McDonald Sonoran Preserve or the Desert Discovery Center. So with that, we put forward two options for discussion, and staff is here to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, David. I don't see any questions at this point in time, but we do have a number of cards from the public testimony or request to speak on this subject, and we may be back to you after that. I'll start with yes, we do, and we have Howard Myers.
Thank you, Howard Myers. I still live at the same place. We all know the city desperately needs money, and I've been involved in a lot of efforts, including the task force for the general plan. We know we need to maintain our assets, so that's not an issue. The problem is how you've driven this city to needing all this money with all of the upzoning you've done that's increased density and bringing businesses in that don't really pay anything into the city to pay for themselves. That's really where the problem is and where my problem is. During the general plan task force, we brought all this up. Nobody wanted to listen, so they wanted to hear from financial experts, and they told them the same thing. Yes, that's true, and what you don't want to do is compromise tourism because that's what's sustaining your city, and you don't want to change the plan that has worked in the past, except that's exactly what we're doing. The outcome was exactly that you don't want to change the way that you've been successful. In the past, tourism really covered the losses from development and from bringing businesses in, but it no longer does because the percentages have all changed because we want to dramatically increase the population of the city and of both businesses and residents. It isn't the money that you're asking for, the $350 million. It's the lack of a plan to bring this city to some sustainable level, and we're nowhere close to that. We give you $350 million, you're going to need a lot more in a couple of years. And then when that cliff comes where we have to pay the pensions that we're underfunding now, that's another big cliff where we're going to need money. So there's no plan. I see no plan coming out of this council that says how are we going to get this city to a level where our income matches our expenses, and our expenses include things like maintenance that are real expenses that should be in the general fund. You can't just underfund them and say, well, push it off and push it off, push it off. Well, we've done that, and now we're at this cliff where we need all this money. And so it's not just this money that I'm worried about. It's where's the rest of the money going to come from, and when are you going to ask for it? The problem is you're not really being honest with us and telling us what we really need to do to make the city sustainable tax-wise. You're going to have to increase taxes. We know that, and you're probably going to have to do both sales and property tax. But you got to have a plan before you can do that and before we'll accept it. Now, the citizens might accept a bond issue if you broke it out and told them this is exactly what the money is going to be used for, and you can choose whether you want to do this or not, because there's a lot of projects I looked on there I didn't think really need to be done myself. But anyway, if you just put it in one big package, it's all or nothing, win or lose, I think you're going to lose. And that's a problem with going that route. And as upset as citizens are right now with the city and the way the city is going. For now, I would suggest you accept Councilman Phillips' motion, at least give us some money. Transportation is always the big issue and the big money user. That'll get us somewhere. And at least put a plan together and tell us what it is before you come and say we want a lot more money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Next is Alex McLaren.
Mayor, members of the council, Alex McLaren, 7730 East Osborne Road. And I hope this evening you're going to deliberate on both of the options. I'm sure you've seen what the options are. And in my view, the GO bonds are preferable. I've expressed that view before. There's a wide array of projects in the proposal which cover large areas of the city: transportation, public safety, parks, the downtown area. I know there's a concern about putting it all in one bond package, and I think Mr. Myers mentioned that as well. But I think that's something you could discuss this evening. I think GO bonds are the best way of funding infrastructure. Businesses pay approximately 30% of the debt service for the bonds. All of the property owners, including those who don't live here full-time, also pay. It's a progressive tax in that the more, the higher your property value, the more tax you would pay. And I think the key that the city has been working on is to keep the secondary tax level. I think we've seen the graph a number of times that have been presented by city staff. With regard to the sales tax, 0.15%, approximately $15 million annually. That, as Mr. Lipinski said, would fund the ALCP projects over 7 years. That leverages the $170 million from the regional sales tax. And if you do use that 0.15% funds to use MPC bonds, then the question could be asked, if you're going to issue bonds, why not issue GO bonds in the first place? Also, I'd like to point out that although the $70 million would fund the ALCP projects, there are other projects, transportation projects, to the tune of $102 million in the $350 million package. So I also noticed that the 0.15, there is no time limit on that. That's another issue I think that you might well deliberate on this evening, how long that could go for. But if there's a sales tax, in my view, it's not the best solution. But if it is the one that the council chooses, I certainly would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Next would be Copper Phillips.
Good evening, Mayor Lane, members of council. I think I got everything up there. Copper Phillips, 7451 East Viadana Road in Scottsdale, and I'm here representing COGS, the Coalition of Greater Scottsdale. The city of Scottsdale does not have a sustainable budget. We know this. There is simply not enough funds to meet our expenses, and especially those expenses for maintenance and repair. Councilman Smith, as a former treasurer, has really kept track of the budget, and we've known for a long time we don't have enough money to repair our infrastructure in our facilities. Our public safety retirement fund is going to be depleted in our general fund. We're just a few years down the pike from having our fire department have massive retirements, and of course the retirement salaries that need to be paid from that are going to further deplete the general fund. Council majority has denied support for the general plan update, in which the public has provided considerable input that would promote sustainable development and long-range vision. We do have a general plan that was proposed by the citizens, and yet it has just been shelved. Council majority has treated with disdain citizen pleas for bond line item voting. To add transparency, accountability, and trust, for the past 6 years, bond votes have largely failed. I'm absolutely unconvinced that this bond is going to pass. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've not had success in the last 6 years. Do something different, something better to get this bond passed. COGS believes that this city is in desperate straits with respect to repair and maintenance of facilities and infrastructure. Certainly a transportation sales tax would help fund needs. We also believe that a new bond package is critically needed now. However, we also believe that a sales tax increase in bond package will not pass if citizen advisement and opinion continues to be disregarded. Our concerns and trepidations for the support of these resolutions is great, but our love of the city and its well-being are even greater. For this reason, COG supports Resolution 11124, which proposes increasing sales tax by 0.15% to provide funds for transportation improvement projects, capital improvement projects, operations, and related costs. We also support Resolution 11092, which authorizes the issuance and sale of $350 million principal amount of general obligation bonds with the following stipulations: that bond items include only prioritized critical needs, not a laundry list of anything possible. A line item vote allowed for each critical need. Critical needs are grouped by topics such as transportation, drainage, parks and recreation, parking, office technology, security, public safety, Westworld, etc. That there be a statement that the money can only be used for these projects, and all items will not pass, we know that, but many will if the voters have true opportunity to vote their future and there is accountability. COGS is mindful that these two resolutions cannot sustain our needs. There's another probably $450 million to $500 million to meet our maintenance and repair costs over the next few years. Additional bonds will be required quickly if other resource revenues are not found. We need a long-term solution to sustainability of city resources and not Band-Aids. So please consider alternatives on how we can truly get this bond passed. I thank you much.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Next would be Louise Lamb.
Mayor Lane, Vice Mayor Cordy, City Council members. At the April 17th City Council meeting, a proposal to add $30 million to the general obligation bonds for stadium repairs failed. I'd like to see it put back, adding it to Resolution 11092. Having each bond listed separately is not in the best interest of Scottsdale. In the November 5th, 2015 bond election, of the 6 questions on the ballot, the only project the people in the northern part of Scottsdale voted for was a fire station in their area, Districts 11 and 12. Whereas in the southern part of Scottsdale, residents approved every project on the ballot, Districts 1 through 4. This means the southern residents of Scottsdale considered Scottsdale as a whole as they voted for a fire station up north, nowhere near where they lived. It's way past time the residents of Scottsdale consider and think of Scottsdale as one and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Next is, and last is Jason Rose.
Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Some of you have received correspondence from Bobby Sparrow, the president of the Arizona Automobile Dealers Association. I'd like to read a more succinct statement and a more current statement to you tonight for consideration. In 2016, new auto sales in Arizona represented 21% of all retail sales in the state. This economic activity for the benefit of the state and city is on full display on Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard, across from Scottsdale Fashion Square, southern Scottsdale, and elsewhere. It fuels much of the resource for Scottsdale police, fire, parks, roads, and community needs. Unfortunately, an increase in the sales tax encouraged by the Scottsdale City Council would negatively impact this economic activity. at a time when the state is considering a dramatic increase in the state sales tax coinciding with the just announced surge in vehicle registration fees supported by the Republicans and Governor Ducey, the association is opposed in general to Scottsdale City sales tax increase rather than a general obligation bond that notably would not increase taxes. However, we appreciate and recognize the challenges and choices before Scottsdale, especially as the ballot may be shared by a controversial, unrelated matter. To this end, we recommend compromise, not confrontation, should the tax increase course be maintained, similar to what was achieved with our association in Phoenix, Glendale, Pinal County, and Avondale. And that would be to apply any tax increase, whether it is a tenth of a cent or 15 cents of 1 cent, to the first $10,000 of a purchase, but not thereafter. The stipulation would phase out, at which point the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community increased its sales tax to mirror Scottsdale's as has historically been done, eliminating this imbalance. Some may say this is too complicated. Well, I think that's what you pay Mr. Washburn, the huge salary that you do to figure this stuff out, and complication has accompanied other similar proposals in other cities, only to be figured out. We respect this compromise while also respectfully requesting that any potential bond request in 2019 or 2020 be property tax based, as any further increase in the sales tax is something we would oppose vigorously. Remember that it's ultimately the taxpayer paying for the increased sales tax, so we view this approach as good for taxpayers and good policy as well as good politics that will not drive more transactions out of the city into nearby jurisdictions or tribal land or out of state as the state sales tax increases to higher and higher levels. These are complex matters, and we are here to take the time necessary, as we appreciated the city manager and city treasurer doing with us yesterday, to get these solutions right rather than rush into a result that is wrong for all. And I would like to note, too, that I bumped into Oliver Smith, who runs a great jewelry store in Scottsdale, who shared some of these concerns and said it was okay to mention him. I did not coordinate with him in advance, but the concerns are there. And on a personal note, having visited with your very capable city manager yesterday about the issue before you, I've seen a lot of difficult issues in my time, and what you have before you tonight is about as complicated and complex as it gets in terms of an election, a policy, and a public affairs issue. So I wish you good luck. I do think there's a way forward. I think there's a deal to be had. Councilman Phillips has proven that one man can take a bond measure down in Scottsdale. The number one rule of any ballot measure campaign is to eliminate the opposition. I think a little time, a little thought, there's a deal there. It can be done, and I hope you can find it tonight or shortly thereafter so the community can be well served. Thanks for the consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. You take a little bit of personal privilege, I suppose, as chair of this council, and just go through a little bit of a background on this, because it is a complicated issue, and frankly, there's some challenges even in trying to understand some of the issues that confront this council when we choose between a sales tax or a bonding issue. And a lot of it's got to do with very specific circumstances that surround our environment, some of which was addressed by some of the testimony that was given earlier, some controversial issues and certain areas of concern about the direction and even of debt, I suppose, even though the preponderance of our debt is actually, for the most part, tied up, as far as the city's concerned, with the preserve, the debt that was to purchase the preserve, and also for our water treatment plant. So that's a big part of that debt, and it's all continuing to be paid off as it should be. But aside from that, the reason that I still am strongly in favor of the sales tax measure is because it is something that will, I'm hoping, certainly be passed by the full council, but that will quickly put us in a position, this also was mentioned, of leveraging, and maybe assure us of this, because transportation sales tax It's an add to something that already exists. It's a separate fund. These are not commingled funds. They can only be used for transportation on whatever order. We currently do have transportation funds for some of the very reasons that we need this one for as well. But in any case, it does separate and assure everyone that this is not to be used, nor can it be used, and can it offset? It can't even offset funds from somewhere else. So it's a surest way to give that assurance of somehow trading off funds somehow within the city. And it's for specifically and only transportation capital projects. But I've certainly been having to deal with folks who wonder where I come from. Many of you probably do know that my background is financial, CPA for many years. And the idea that I would think about of course, in the private sector, you're not dealing with taxes, but you are talking about current revenues, and there may be a little bit different. But when you talk about long-term capital requirements for infrastructure of any sort, you're going to generally bond it, you're going to generally borrow on it, but you're going to use long-term debt. Could be equity, could be debt, but it's going to be long-term. That's not consistent with what we're faced with today. Though we may use some of this money to issue debt, the reason will simply be to make sure that we do not lose $140 million of Prop 400 monies, which we've been deferring for many years, and it's starting to roll off the cliff. We're not going to be able to recover it if we're not able to match it with the $70 million that we're talking about generating with this, and to the $140 million to produce $210 million, I believe that is, if I'm doing my, $240 million, pardon me. Just professing to be an accountant. And but in any case, that's a tremendous amount of leverage on it, and it's an important one. And the idea that we would lose it is something that it would almost feel like you're shooting yourself in the foot. So I haven't lost that sense of financing, as I mentioned. But the circumstances, I think, are things you cannot forget about, and they do sometimes dictate other means. So to ensure the timing, when the leverage of the $70 million to $240 million, to leverage that to projects and transportation is a good one. A good portion of this is for our life cycle plans and programs for our streets. A lot of it is capital expenditures, but it's generally for existing assets. There could be improvements, it could be rebuilds, it could be any number of things that extend life to the facility or the road or the street. So it's something that's quantifiable. It'll be consistent and continue. We're also suggesting so that it does match up with one of the disciplines that's in a general obligation bond, and that is its sunset, to have it sunset after 10 years and not continue. I think another important component in sort of the discipline to it. So it's transportation dedicated, it's for matching funds to leverage that money from Prop 400, and it sunsets. We have a lousy experience and a lousy track record over the years that I've been here in this position with bond initiatives. There's a variety of reasons for that. It may have started out with the Great Recession, where we were somewhat timid about it, but it also was something we were very sensitive about with our community. Beyond that, it's developed into other things. We'd like to get past those other issues. We think we have an opportunity to do that. So we're not putting out of mind what we may be able to do with eventually a general obligation bond. I still believe it's an important factor for what the city needs to do to maintain the standards. On the one hand, on transportation, just maintaining our road standards, which right now, I hear from somebody almost every day about some concern about the standards of the roads. So that's, and we also have more major issues of our bridges and roads that may be unsafe in condition in some respects. So I'm not setting aside the general obligation bond from myself, but for now I am. I think if we can pass this, this will do well for us to move forward and make sure that we're using our assets the best possible way moving forward and maintaining Scottsdale. So with that, I will go on some further conversations, but I believe that this initiative and 11124 is certainly worthy of adopting. And with that, to Councilwoman Clapp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also in favor of continuing with the discussion that we had last time about having a sales tax on the ballot in November of this year. And for some of the same reasons that were just mentioned by the mayor, but I'd like to just kind of go through some of the emails I've received. And there's been a number of them. Some of the people in the audience here have sent me emails. And some say that we should vote for a bond question rather than sales tax, and we heard that tonight. Another is I will support a sales tax question, and I will work hard to take down a bond project list. One way or another, bond projects translate to free up money for Desert Edge. I know we don't want to talk about it, but people are sending me emails about this. Another says we're taking the easy way out by supporting a sales tax. Another one says, several from car dealers, as was mentioned, and from hoteliers, telling us that they think the 0.15% increase is too much on our present tax rate. One says we need the tourism projects passed on the bond project lists. These are more important than transportation. Another says get the transportation list out of the bond list so we can get them done. Another says put Desert Edge to bed so we can move on with the bond project question. So you can see this is complicated, as was mentioned by one of the speakers. But nearly everyone I've spoken with personally, when I've asked them, believes that the bond question, if put on the ballot in November, will fail. And the facts are that almost every question for bond projects has failed since 2010. We had 3 previous elections. I've supported every one of these bond project elections as a member of this council. So my actual track record, I think, speaks for myself about my support in the past for the bond projects that have been on the ballot. If we had a 7-0 agreement today on this bond project list, I would support putting a $350 million list of bond projects on the ballot, but we aren't there now. This same controversy, incidentally, was pointed out to me by one other emailer that said that this controversy took place back in 1989, almost the same sort of lengthy discussion about what to do about funding a number of projects, including transportation. So after much discussion back in 1989 versus bonds versus sales tax, the council agreed to take a 0.2% transportation sales tax to the voters, and it passed. That's nearly 30 years ago, so here we are today. We need to add to that tax. Last time we voted, 4 members of this body, including me, agreed to take, as was mentioned in the motion, a 0.15% transportation sales tax to the voters. And it was, as the motion was stated, it would be in 3 steps. Sales taxes in 2018, settle the Desert Edge project after that, then take the bond project list to voters in 2020. This was the motion made by Councilman Phillips. So I'd like to make a motion that would modify that proposal a bit. I believe a 0.1% transportation sales tax responds to concerns from the auto dealers and from some of the other people I've heard from about the sales tax rate. That would take our city sales tax rate to 1.75% rather than the current 1.65%. That exactly matches the tax rate in Mesa and is still lower than all the other valley cities except for Chandler and Gilbert. And also, this new transportation tax should be sunsetted, as the mayor mentioned, in 10 years. We should have that sunset clause, which is sufficient time and the amount to fund for all the critical transportation projects that require matching funds that are supported by Prop 400. This is money we've paid into the fund
we'd like to get it back. And we want 72 million exactly, for arterial life cycle projects, additional amount that will be for projects that will come along over those 10 years. And over the course of 10 years, that would generate $100 million of sales tax money, but of course another $140 million that would come from Prop 400 taxes. So my motion is that I'd like to make a motion to modify resolution number 1124, authorizing and calling a special election for Tuesday, November 6th, to submit to the qualified electors of the City of Scottsdale the question of authorizing the increase in the rate of transaction privilege and use taxes in the city by 0.10, and also adding a sunset provision of 10 years and limiting the use of the funds to transportation improvement projects and related operating costs. And then secondly, I'd like to direct the staff to schedule a work study session this fall for a presentation, discussion, and direction on all the remaining capital projects, funding options, with the expectation that the bond election would be in November of 2019.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilwoman Clapp and seconded by Councilman Phillips. Would you like to speak toward it, Councilman?
Well, thank you, Mayor. You said a lot already, but I'd like to remind everybody that, for one, I hope the voters will go for this because we really need those matching funds from the state. You already paid it, and they're holding it, so why not get that before they give it away to somebody else? And the other thing is that by putting these transportation projects on this, it's going to free up a lot of projects to put on the bond. So now a lot of those can now move up the queue because we won't be spending half of our bond money on transportation projects. So I think this is going to end up being a win-win for everybody, especially the city. And I'm looking forward to a good result. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. I support these changes. I think they're good changes. They address some of the concerns that people had regarding a transportation tax increase. And at the same time, it gives us the money we need to get the matching funds from the Prop 400 money. We only have a few years to get that before that money starts going away from us and to other cities. You've already paid for that. Our citizens have already paid their taxes into this fund. For us to have this money, I believe it is to their best interest, in our best interest, to get that money to satisfy some of these transportation needs that we do have. I do have a couple of other suggestions, however. If the 0.1% increase for 10 years is enough to do this and to fill these needs, I'm fine with that. I don't want to tax anyone more than what we need to tax them for in order to keep our city in good shape. I do think we should require a listing of the ALCP projects that we anticipate completing by using the Prop 400 money along with the tax money in any brochure that the city distributes for such an election as this, so that citizens can see what some of those projects are and what they would be voting for. Also, we should include a statement to the effect that these projects will receive all possible priority. That leaves a door open if there's an emergency of some sort that we can't foresee at this time, but it also tells citizens these are what we're focusing on, this is what we want to do. I believe this is necessary for transparency and for openness to our citizens when they go to the ballot box. We are, after all, asking for some of their money, and I also believe we should require a bond commission, either the current one or a newly appointed one, to review the ALCP projects as they are constructed with this money to assure our citizens that their money is being spent as we promised. All of these things will increase openness, transparency, and accuracy as to what we want this money for. And they also reaffirm our acceptance of the voters' desire for these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Having no further comments on this topic, Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, a question to staff, I guess. The question that we see up there as option 1, I guess, is not the same as what we're being asked to vote on. It's and specifically, I guess I would ask if the percentage is changing to 0.10 from 1.15, but more importantly, the question as it was worded was to provide funds for transportation improvement projects, capital projects, and operations and related costs, which sounds like just about anything. Are we looking at more limiting language now for this motion? Can someone clarify?
Excuse me, Councilman.
I can tell you what I said. I said transportation improvement projects and related operating costs. I did not say exactly. I dropped out capital projects. I said transportation improvement projects and related operating costs.
Okay. And then it would have a 10-year sunset, which is, again, a feature that was not on that option.
Yes, that would be added to the option.
To the staff, I guess I would ask for clarification. Everything that might be embodied in this option is also embodied in the bond option, the $350 million bond option. In other words, it too would provide for the same capital projects that this option provides for. It would provide the same leverage for getting Prop 400 money, provide for all the same things. Is that right?
Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Smith, that is correct.
Well, I'm not quite sure what to do at this point. I mean, I would make an alternative motion, but I think that might just keep us here longer tonight. You know, I'm not tone deaf to the message that some citizens distrust the council, but I know that trust and honesty are interconnected items. I think even one of the speakers talked about that tonight. We cannot hope to earn trust if we're not completely honest and open and transparent with the citizens. And understanding the connection between honesty and trust, that more than anything else explains why I cannot support this motion for an increase in our sales tax rate to pay for capital investments. And let me tell you why I say that, because there are really three reasons. First of all, as a city council body, we know that the city has an accumulated backlog of capital needs of $800 million. We also know that the $350 million bond package that was the ask that we were looking for before was a minimum. We know as a council that we should be investing $100 million a year just to offset the annual depreciation of our assets. But we choose not to tell you any of that. And I think that's not transparent or honest. Instead, what we're asking you to do is approve a sales tax increase that will generate only $10 million a year, which is equal to less than 2% of what we all know up here to be the capital needs of the city. We're going to ignore the remaining urgent needs of the city and simply kick the can down the road. And I don't think that's honesty. I think second, as a council body, we also know that 85% of any sales tax collected in the city is paid by citizens. The rest, the remaining 15%, is paid by tourists. It's been a declining number, as one of the speakers mentioned. We all know the reasons for that. On the other hand, we know that only 50% of a property tax is paid by the citizens, because the other half is paid by businesses and it's paid by out-of-state investors. but we choose not to tell you that either. As a council body, we know that our sales tax is our most unfair tax in the city. We know that any increase in sales tax, if it's not accompanied by some kind of tax relief for our neediest citizens, will actually increase the most punitive part of the tax that we impose, and that's the tax on groceries. We don't tell you that either. Instead, what we're proposing here tonight is to ask all of our citizens to shoulder a larger share of the total tax burden, 85% instead of 50%, and increase the punitive tax on our neediest citizens. All of this so that we can perpetuate the free ride on property tax increases that this council has granted to businesses and the wealthy residents of our community for the past 10 years. And I don't think that's honesty. There's a third reason that I think is a problem, and that is, as a council body, we know that our fellow citizens want some idea of what projects their taxes will fund. And even as we have modified the language here, I'm not sure that we know what it's going to fund. We've even heard some say we should have a possibility, an escape clause for possibly higher priority projects. I think the citizens want and expect that we'll have a citizen oversight committee watching out for their interests. Certainly none is proposed here for this option. We don't tell you what this is going to be spent for. We don't tell you that there's going to be a bond oversight committee. We have put in a sunset date. What that means is that we won't even be able to borrow against this revenue stream because the period of time that the revenue stream will exist is too short to borrow against. You could have borrowed against the revenue stream coming from the $350 million bond offering, but that's not here the case. So I don't think that's honesty either. I guess I feel like if this council hopes to regain the trust of the citizens, it has to start with honest communications and not political pandering. I was not elected to tell you what you want to hear. I was elected to tell you the truth. And the truth is, this proposal falls woefully short of keeping your city in the condition you'd like to have it kept. I won't pretend for a moment that this is adequate to meet the needs of the city or to protect your interests. I think if we could go to the citizens with the truth, I have great confidence in my fellow citizens that they would do what's right to protect their great community. And it's not Resolution 1124. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor Cordy.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a time that we will look back on with regret, especially those who thought a sales tax increase was better than a property tax to move forward with a GO bond. This is politically expedient. It's a decision based on expediency rather than a thoughtful one based on what's best for our city and our citizens long term. This is not a plan, and I agree with Mr. Myers. This isn't a plan. It really ignores much greater needs that total most of $650 million worth of needs. It ignores the $102 million of transportation needs that we're not even talking about. And you know, if we talked about the property tax, so we talk about a sales tax, which the greatest impact of that sales tax is going to be on our citizens, and especially those who can least afford it. As Councilman Smith stated, 85% of this is going to be paid by our Scottsdale citizens, whereas if we were going to look at a property tax and a general obligation bond, we would be looking at about 30, so about 30% business pays, about 30% our residents pay, and about 30% our winter visitor residential demographic pays. And if we were going to look at a property tax, the rate's not going to change because of the expiring existing bonds today. They are retiring, and as they retire, we will add new bonds, and your property tax would not change. And that was the beauty of our proposal, to keep it around $350 to $400 million, because the property tax is not going to change. It wouldn't impact you at all as a property owner. But the sales tax is going to impact you. And, what's really been missing from this conversation is fiscal responsibility. Bottom line is, this just is not fiscally responsible. And furthermore, we had been talking about a plan, move forward with a GEO bond, and then spend the next year talking about real sales tax reform, and talk about perhaps eliminating the food tax and bringing in some reform that would be some type of quality of life tax that would support our arts and culture and things that we hold very near and dear here in Scottsdale, and this really prevents that. There's really so many pros for the property tax. I mentioned there was no increase in cost. It's the most transparent. We have a list of about 99 projects, and a bond measure, property tax bond measure, would be specifically for those projects. Whereas the sales tax, we don't. We talk about our ALCP transportation projects, but other things could happen, and there's no conversation around a citizen oversight committee. And then, not to mention that sales tax is a pretty volatile funding source, and we certainly experienced that in the Great Recession beginning in 2008. We're just now back in 10 years. 10 years later, we're just now collecting the same amount of sales tax that we collected back in 2007. 10 years later. Not to mention the pressure of sales tax and brick and mortar sales and internet sales and that whole impact on that funding source. So clearly, I am not going to be supporting this motion, and again, I believe we will be looking back on this evening with great regret.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman Clapp.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of clarifications. It was stated that we cannot borrow against the $10 million per year over 10 years, and we can. I've checked with the treasurer. We have done borrowing in the past for a 10-year period, so there is no reason why we cannot borrow against the $10 million per year revenue stream to fund all the projects, which would be $100 million, which is about what was in the $350 million list of bond projects. And also, I would support what Councilwoman Littlefield said about the pamphlet for the ballot would have an explanation of the arterial life cycle projects that are being funded, where we are getting matching funds from Prop 400. There's no problem with putting that in a pamphlet so that people know exactly what the projects are that are going to be funded through this question. And finally, the other comment that was made about tax reform. This does not preclude any conversation by this council on tax reform. I welcome a conversation related to tax reform as it relates to the food tax or any potential other changes we might want to do to reform the sales tax area. So those things, I think, are being considered. This is strictly the language that would be presented to the voters for initiating a transportation sales tax of 0.1%.
Thank you, Councilwoman Clapp. Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate what Councilwoman Clapp just said. We do want oversight. We want openness, transparency. I see no reason why an oversight committee can't watch these projects just like they would watch projects from a bond. If we have them listed as these particular things that we're going to be trying to do, then that's what we can do. There's no issue there. And I think I'd like to bring out something else about a bond issue right now, a $350 million bond issue. Look around this room. These are not happy people. We have a huge, huge problem in Scottsdale, and it's a huge disconnect between the city and us, and it's not going away. Nothing that's been said tonight has made this any changes to this problem from when we started a month ago. I bring to your consideration again, we lost 9 out of 11 bond questions in the last few years, and the 2 that passed just barely passed. It's a simple fact. It's not slanted, it's not political, it's a fact. There is nothing right now here in this negatively charged atmosphere of our city that means we're going to be able to pass a bond election. I don't think we will, especially a bond question, one question, huge, bloated, and with no description on the ballot as to what it is or what we're going to be doing with it. That means everybody's going to have to go to other areas, dig it out, look at the read it out. It's not going to happen, people. It's not going to pass. I am very glad we have an alternative to that tonight in the sales tax question. I like the compromises that have been made. I like the ending of the sales tax, the lower rate, that's fine. But I would like to personally thank Councilman Phillips for bringing this out and bringing this as a possibility for our attention. I think it's a good idea. It's something that might pass because we can tell our citizens quite honestly, you've already paid for most of this tax. You've already put this money into the Prop 400 monies, and what we're going to be doing is to ensure that before that goes away from us and goes to other cities, your taxes going to other cities, we're going to take advantage of that and bring that money home to us so our transportation needs can be met. I think that makes ultimate sense, because if we don't do it, that money's not coming here, and you lose out. I don't support a bond election for 2018 for these reasons, because I don't believe right now, the way we're looking at things, it has a snowball's chance of passing in Scottsdale. We need to fix the problems that are facing us and the distrust between us and our citizens that we're having to look at. I think it needs to be a clear and detailed set of projects, needs to be defined. Once we do a bond, we need to go back and take the time as a council to look at what it is that we want to do, define those programs, define the departments, police, fire, whatever it is, IT, Parks and Rec. We have a lot of issues, we have a lot of needs in the city. All of us up here want those needs fulfilled. We don't want the city to deteriorate, none of us. But we want to put together a bond package that has at least a reasonable chance of success. We need to craft a bond package. We need to have the time to go back as a council, craft the package itself on how it is presented, and make it something that is not ambiguous, that is clear, that is concise, that is transparent to the citizens and to the voters who are going to be looking at that and wondering what they're doing. That's how we get it passed. Not like this, in one huge opaque question that nobody standing there at a ballot box is going to understand what is involved in it. And I'd like to say one other thing. I've heard a number of emails. I've gotten the same emails that Councilwoman Clapp and all the rest of us have gotten from all the people that don't like a sales tax, and they're a proponent of the bond package. And they're suggesting that bonds would not be a tax increase because they would take the place of the bonds that are about to mature. But Scottsdale property owners are smart enough to know that you don't get something for nothing. You don't get $350 million worth of projects for nothing. If these bonds are not approved, the property taxes will go down, yes, because we have less debt. The bonds would indeed increase if the taxes go forward. Proponents of a 2013 bond proposal tried to use the same sleight of hand, that these bonds aren't going to cost you anything because the bond rates are going to stay the same. Voters didn't fall for it then, and those bonds went down. They're not going to fall for it now. They know it's going to increase their taxes. Both of these issues would increase taxes. These bonds will cost the voters $350 million plus interest, and every dime would be paid by the property owners, whether they're citizens or out-of-town property owners. That's where the money goes. That's where it comes from to pay this kind of bond. So I think we need to set back a little bit here, folks, and say, okay, if we're going to do a sales tax, let's list it on the brochure of what projects we're going to do and how we're going to spend that money. Let's use a commission, a bond commission, either the one we have now or do a new one, whichever, and have them go through and make sure those projects are done so citizens can be assured that we're doing exactly what we promised them. Then go back this summer or in the fall and sit down as a council, take the time we need, and build out a bond proposal that we can present with reasonable surety and clarity to our citizens and saying, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it. Do you accept that and do you agree? We cannot do that with any kind of possibility or great chances of success if we don't fix or settle the problem of the DDC first. This is what the huge disconnect has caused, and we need to make sure we get a question on the ballot to fix this. Now, citizens are going to force it on us if we don't do it ourselves. I think we need to look at the proposals that they have on their petitions and take it back and say, let's put this on a ballot, let's get this thing settled one way or the other, yes or no, and then we can move forward as a unified community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Milhaven.
Thank you, Mayor. So for me, this conversation is about sales tax versus property tax. All of the folks who objected to previous bond votes for property tax, your concerns are not being addressed by substituting a property tax for a sales tax. It doesn't address the no concerns. Whether it's a sales tax or a property tax, we can dedicate the money to transportation either way. It's the ballot language that decides it, not the kind of a tax. So either can be dedicated for a purpose, either can be used for matching funds from the county for transportation projects, either can sunset. And so there's really no advantage to sales tax over a property tax in that regard. We talked a little bit about bonding against these proceeds. I have 37 years of banking experience and lending experience, and what I will tell you from my experience is you do not have a fixed payment with a variable revenue stream. Councilwoman Cordy talked about the variability in our sales tax. So we were at $109 million in 2007 and $76 million in 2010. We don't, if we're going to bond, which we heard we're going to have to bond in order to advance these monies, you don't take a variable income source with a fixed payment. It is not fiscally responsible. The other is, because of the technicality in how the city repays it, the bonds secured by sales tax carry a higher rate than the bonds secured with a property tax. So that means our tax dollars are going to buy us fewer capital improvements. Additionally, a property tax is deductible on most of our income taxes, whereas a sales tax is not. So a property tax dollar is discounted and a sales tax dollar is not. So for my money, a property tax is a more fiscally responsible way for us to pay for our long-term needs. When I look at the additional arguments that folks make about a bond, questions need to be specific. We do not have a list of the specific projects that this sales tax is going to fund, nor do we have any structure for the oversight that people demand that we have. In addition, our broader community needs are being ignored. We have city parks that have bathrooms that are an embarrassment. We've got lakes. The little Dutch boy's got to put his finger in the dike to keep it from spilling over when it rains. We've got trees falling into our lakes. We've got firehouses that need to be fixed. All of that is being ignored. Councilwoman Littlefield talks about a huge bloated question. This is no different than a sales tax is no different, does not address that. This is a vague reference to transportation projects, ignores our broader needs, and is an inferior solution. I will clearly not be supporting this tonight, but I certainly hope that the folks who are going to vote yes will go raise the money to advocate for what they think is the right thing, and we'll let the citizens decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to correct what I think is an incorrect statement I made earlier this evening. I made the statement that all of us here are well aware of the enormous capital needs of the city and that there's $800 million in size. And apparently at least one of us here on the dais does not agree with that if they think that $350 million is a quote-unquote bloated request. So we are not unanimous in that regard. I am concerned, obviously, that this ignores all of the other capital needs of the city, which are enormous, and you all know them because you live in the city. You see the fountains that have been shut down, the bridges that are collapsing, the potholes in the road. You see all of this thing. But with this, you're going to pay more and get less. And that's too bad. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Phillips.
I'd like to call the question.
All right, question is called. But with that, I'm going to take a little bit of license myself and say that I think it's a careful area when we're looking at the fact that we will be looking at the bond. We will be studying how it might be presented. We're looking to do that quickly. As far as the defining of what's in the transportation, it is a separate fund, and it is specifically for the arterial life cycle program, which is a standard program to keep our roads to the standards that we would want them at. It's not a matter of a series of bunch of different projects. It's a matter of timing every 5 years, whatever the cycle calls out for. It's a pretty simple thing. We do have professionals that review that. So it's not a great mystery. I suppose there's a certain amount of faith you have to have in our professional staff as to when these things would be taking place. But with that, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Nichols, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just wanted to point out there has been discussion tonight about whether these dollars could be leveraged, and I'm not certain the way the wording is up there, and excluding other costs, other related costs, would prohibit us from paying interest cost on debt if we issued it. And so I would have a concern because that may limit us just to a pay-go program with this. And I don't know the project delivery schedules for each of these ALCP projects, or whether the amount generated on an annual basis would be sufficient to cover those.
Okay, so is there a language that we would have to put?
Yep, Mayor, the original language on the ballot question was transportation projects and operating and related costs. And my opinion was the related costs would cover anything necessary to pay for, use the tax to pay for the transportation projects. But now the related costs was taken out and it was changed to transportation and related operating costs. So I think if we change the ballot language back to
Are you wanting to use exact words that are in the very end there where it says transportation improvement projects, capital projects, and operations and related costs?
yeah, but you want to take out capital projects, and I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I want to take that out. The rest is fine.
All right, good. We'll do it that way then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that answer the problem that you were relating?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Clapp, yes, it does.
Okay, so we'll just take capital projects out of the language, and then the other modifications that I made, which has to do with the percentage and the sunset timing.
Okay, well, thank you both for that. It's certainly a little distressing to hear the dissatisfaction with the individuals that have voted, will be voting on this issue versus those who oppose it. We're going to need to work together, but if we go at this like this, I think we'll have the worst of all. But in any case, the intent here was an honest one, contrary to some of the conversation that preceded me here. And I think the intent is meant to make sure we have a successful issue. Yes.
Your Honor, I just want to make sure for the record that the second to the motion is okay with that change that we just made?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm hoping that we not only can get this done for all the reasons we've stated, but we can also move on to work on a bond that's going to be acceptable, get past some of the issues, and to be able to work together to make that successful as well. I don't think there's anyone at this table, and maybe there's the exception that, well, it was stated earlier, that doesn't believe that the city has a need for capital, for long-term capital needs and infrastructure. So with that, I think we're then ready to vote. All those in favor, please indicate by aye. Those opposed with a nay. Aye. Measure passes 4-3 with Councilwoman Milhaven, Vice Mayor Cordy, and Councilman Smith opposing. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions and testimony and on this subject. That does complete the issue. All right. We have no further public comment, no petitions that I can sense or see. At this point in time, then, we will go on to our Mayor and Council item 6, which is the Board and Commission's nomination. And for that, I turn it over to the Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, the City Council will be nominating Scottsdale residents interested in serving on citizen advisory boards and commissions. These 7 vacancies are the Board of Adjustment, Environmental Quality Advisory Board, Historic Preservation Commission, Library Board, Lost Trust Fund Board, McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission, and the Planning Commission. Those nominated will be interviewed at the City Council meeting on Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018, and appointments will follow each set of interviews. So let's get going. Board of Adjustments, there's 2 openings. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body that hears variance requests, appeals of the zoning administrator's interpretation decisions, and decides on administrative decisions or zoning requirements. Matt Metz's term expires May 22nd. He is not eligible for reappointment. Greg Mona resigned May 3rd, so there are 2 vacancies and 3 applicants. Applicants are Michael Gonzalez, Scott Johnson, and Jay Leopold. I will now entertain nominations for the board, and I'll start with Mayor Lane, please.
Nominate Michael Gonzalez and Scott Johnson.
And move forward to clap, please.
I nominate Scott Johnson. I'm sorry, Jay Leopold.
So there are no further nominations to be had, so we can move on. Environmental Quality Advisory Board, there's one opening. The Environmental Quality Advisory Board provides guidance on the prioritization of future environmental activities and recommends environmental policies to the City Council. Special qualifications as specified in the Scottsdale City Code. The membership of the board shall reflect both scientific and non-scientific interests. Candace Gimbel's term expires on May 22nd. She represented a business scientific position and is not eligible for reappointment. There is one vacancy and 5 applicants. The applicants are David Abramovic, Walter Kuchulik, Stephanie Foote, Jan Michael Greenberg, and Natalie Lazar. I will now entertain nominations. Each council member can nominate one applicant. And Councilwoman Clapp, please.
Sorry. One nomination. I nominate Natalie Lazar.
David Abramovic.
David Abramovic.
No further.
None further.
No further.
And no further.
So we have 2 nominations, Mr. Abramovic and Ms. Lazar. Moving on to Historic Preservation Commission, there is one opening for an architect or archaeologist. The Historic Preservation Commission oversees the development and management of Scottsdale's historic preservation program. Special qualifications as outlined in the Scottsdale City Code. Each member shall have demonstrated special interest, knowledge, or experience in at least one of the following: building construction, history, architectural history, real estate, historic preservation law, or other historic preservation-related field. Tarana Mazavi's term expires May 12th. She represents an architect position, and she is not eligible for reappointment. There's one vacancy and 2 applicants. Applicants are Linda Davis and Melissa Fedek, and I will start with Councilwoman Milhaven, please.
Linda Davis.
Linda Davis.
Melissa Fedek.
No further nominations for that particular commission, so we will move on. Library Board, there is one opening. The Library Board advises council on general policy related to programs and future development on the library. Lorraine Rogers' term expires May 22nd. She is not eligible for reappointment. And I hope someone got that phone answered. So there is one vacancy and 3 applicants. The applicants are Monica Levins, Dana Rakonik, and Janet Smigelski. And I will start with Councilwoman Littlefield, please.
Thank you. Janet Smigelski.
No further.
Monica Levins.
And I will nominate Dana Rakonik. And that completes those nominations for Library Board. We will move on. Lost Trust Fund Board, there is one opening. The Lost Trust Fund Board is responsible for recommendations to the City Council regarding the administration of the Lost Trust Fund. We currently have no applications on file, so we will move on. McDowell-Sonoran Preserve Commission, there are 2 openings. The McDowell-Sonoran Preserve Commission provides citizen oversight for acquisition, preservation, management, and stewardship of the McDowell Mountain and related Sonoran Desert for the benefit of this and future generations. Steve Dodd's term expires May 12th. He is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application. Mike Malillo's term expires May 12th. He is not eligible for reappointment. There are 2 vacancies and 12 applicants. Ann Adams, Joseph Blankenship, Elise Catton, Andrea Davis, Steve Dodd, Deborah Doss, Mark Hackbarth, Michael Mayer, Laura McFarland, Constance Mole, Brian Munson, and Tawana Parker. I will now entertain nominations, and I will start with Councilman Phillips, please.
Joseph Blankenship and Andrea Davis.
Steve Dodd and Michael Mayer.
Tawana Parker.
No further.
Ann Adams.
And no additional.
No additional.
Thank you. That completes nominations for the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve Commission. Planning Commission, there's one opening. The Planning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council on all matters related to the creation of zoning districts, the enforcement of zoning regulations, and the amendments to all zoning ordinances. Paul Alicio's term expires May 12th. He is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application. There's one vacancy and 3 applicants. Applicants are Paul Alicio, William Conti, and Ryan Schaefer. I will now entertain nominations, beginning with Councilman Smith, please.
Paul Alacio.
No further?
No further.
No further.
No further.
William Conti.
No further.
Thank you. That concludes nominations for Planning Commission and concludes the nomination process for this evening. City staff will contact those who were nominated and provide them with additional information about the interview process. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank all who applied and continue to apply to serve on citizen advisory boards and commissions. Even if you were not nominated, your application will remain on file for 1 year for consideration at a future date if there are additional vacancies on that given commission. So I would like to turn the meeting back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That does conclude our business for this evening. And seeing no further comments from the council, I would ask for an adjournment. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
And seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you.